Welcome, welcome, welcome to Narrate Your Story TV. And I am Dr. Christy Uchuko, the host of Narrate Your Story TV. This is the show that we do every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's right, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I bring you experts, world leaders, entrepreneurs, and individuals to share with you tips, strategies on how to uplevel your life and your business. And today I have an amazing guest speaker today. But before I talk about my guest speaker today, I want to tell you who is my guest speaker today. His name is Vaun Jackson. Vaun is a native of Chicago, Illinois, and is known as the Love Alchemist. He is the master relationship strategist, author, transformational speaker, and personal development coach. He helps married and unmarried couples find their own unique path towards harmony and also helps singles discover their unique, simplest versus most challenging compatibility matches for themselves. His love alchemy and alignment sessions have guided couples and singles all over the world towards lasting, loving relationship. And I am super excited to bring him to the show. Everybody else, listen, it's your story, your voice, your conversation, and let's unpack his story at Narrate Your Story TV. Welcome, Vaughn. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Christy. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Oh, so, Vaughn, for those who don't know who you are, how did the journey of becoming a coach begin? How did you get here? Walk us through the valley and how you got here.
It's almost like a fairy book kind of tale, because I met my wife when I was so young. I met her when I was 12 years old on the playground. And when I tell people that, story, it's kind of like, oh, people get the sweet feelings and all of that stuff. But it wasn't always sweet, So we met when I was 12 years old on the playground. And a couple years after that, we started actually dating. And we graduated. I graduated, and 6 months later we were married. So I've been married since I was 18 years old to my wife. And this year actually makes 33 years total relationship time, 31 years married. I got to remember that kind of stuff because I get in trouble if I forget, right? And so I joined the military, and it wasn't uncommon for young sailors to get married early. So I was amongst people who, had similar interests. But one of the things that helped me was that my wife and I seemed to be a little closer than the average couple. So over time, I ended up advancing in rank and getting some subordinates. And so you have to take care of your junior personnel. And they would often have relationship troubles at the same time that I was even having relationship troubles. But it was my responsibility to help them. And so through helping them, I'm also learning via teaching, right? We know how that goes. You learn while teaching. And so over time, 10 years, 15 years, people are saying, man, you guys are pretty close. How'd you get that way? They would see us laughing together a lot and holding hands together and different things that newlyweds would do. And before you know it, here I am at 15 and 20 years, and people want to know, how do you do that? And so through teaching while in the military, and then even carrying that on beyond, or once I actually realized that we had something that was more unique than common, because so many couples are struggling just to do things, something as simple as liking each other by the time they get to 10 years. And so these kind of things developed my story, and more people wanted to hear about it and wanted to know how I could do that. And people were encouraging me to speak more broadly and teach more broadly. And so here I am. My wife, a few years ago, she said, you're kind of like an alchemist when it comes to this relationship thing. And she called me the Love Alchemist, and it just kind of stuck.
Wow, awesome. Wow, 33 years, 31 years? Are you serious?
Yep.
I have to say, I haven't met you and your wife before, and we get to talk quite often. Your relationship is to be emulated, but we will dive into. We're going to dive into that today. We're going to be talking about the business of love. That's right. We're going to be talking about the business of love, and relationship is really the fabric of our being, but unfortunately, we're still learning how to do this thing. What exactly do you mean by the business of love?
It's really interesting because when I got married because I really loved my wife. I had strong feelings, and she had strong feelings, and we already had two children by the time we got married. And so it was primarily feelings. There was no sense of business or any of that kind of stuff. And over time, I had been hearing people say, well, marriage is really like a business.
Mm,
Marriage is a business. Marriage is a business. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is kind of, you know, a foreign concept to me. But as I began delving a little bit deeper into it, marriage it really does function like a small business, because married couples, you have to manage money together, you have to make joint decisions together, you have to communicate well with one another about dozens of day-to-day issues. And so marriage is really, and the actual contract, it's a legal contract that's a 50-50 contract. And so in a marriage, a spouse must be or be able to function like a business partner, because before anything else, I think seeing your marriage as a business, even though it's often considered kind of distasteful because it kind of
yeah.
waters it down and people think of it as mundane, but it's it really does function like a business with 50-50 shares. And so regardless of how you prefer to see marriage, our legal system forces us to be a business partnership.
Hmm. You
So
know, go
let
ahead.
me kind of
Yeah, go
tie
ahead.
into that. And so in that idea, though, it gets lost that it's not just business. And so we have to learn then, even in this idea that marriage is a business, it's still not a business transaction. So with your spouse, you don't transact, you interact. And so that's where the merger comes in, where it actually the root word of marriage is merge. So the business is much more, and like when you and I in business, it's much more about the transaction. In a marriage with your spouse, it's about the interaction. So there's a difference where you're talking about the business of love, those things, those ideas merging.
Wow, that's a concept, like you said, that is sometimes being misunderstood. Business, marriage being, or relationship really being a business
Yeah.
rather than okay. So right now, we're not going to talk about the gender war between men and women, but let's talk about because we
There
can
was
be here, we can be here all day talking about that. But I really want to understand, how does unhealthy relationship impact our business? And this is what I get to hear from women. I serve women. And please share with us how unhealthy relationship can impact our business, or does it?
it absolutely does. And I'll even go a step further and I'll say that an unhealthy relationship impacts every facet of our lives. Because look, scientists have concluded, sociologists, pardon me, have concluded that as much as 95%, that's a
Wow,
huge number,
that's a big.
95% of our overall happiness can be attributed to how well we're doing in our intimate relationship. And so just imagine somebody who's in an unhealthy relationship, one where they're verbally abused or even worse, physically abused and demeaned and just disregarded and feels undervalued, unappreciated. If they carry all of these feelings and it accounts for this much of our happiness, that's going to play out. That's actually going to play out in how we move and conduct ourselves first and foremost on a personal level. And then that emanates out to everything else that we do. So it's going to definitely impact every facet of our lives, but particularly in this instance, your business.
As you are talking, I'm thinking about, and I've had a friend. I've had a friend that hopefully, and it's okay. But one of the problems that we face, especially female, because as you know, there are more and more women that are entering entrepreneurship as never before. And one of the problems, and I want to get your view on this, because you are the guru when it comes to relationship. One of the problems women face is this idea of men feeling like she doesn't need me anymore. She's making a lot of money now. Where do I fit in? I don't even have time with her anymore. It didn't feel like it used to be. And when I was talking about a friend, I remember a friend that they had a store and the store was doing very well. But not knowing that the husband, even though the money was coming in, the husband has detached himself. He's no longer happy in the relationship. Even though the money was good, the money was coming. Eventually, something happened, they closed the door. They closed the door, shut the store down. And I remember her saying that the husband said he was so happy. And I couldn't quite understand why he was happy that the store that was doing very well shut down. And he said, I was happy because we get to do the things that we used to do when we didn't have the money. I'm happier now that we don't have the money. I feel like I got my wife back. How do we get over that feeling? And sometimes as women, and I have to be honest, when we get into this strive of entrepreneurship, we can really get into it may be where you forget there is somebody else that you need to tag along, especially if that person is not part of the business and the man is feeling she doesn't need me anymore. And at the same time, we really don't get it. We don't even see it. We don't even comprehend. Well, I'm bringing the money. Why do you care? Well, who cares? So talk on that. So I want you to share. Talk on that. How can we make things better?
Yeah, the foundation of it is that we've been given some very unhealthy ideas about what masculinity and what femininity is. And so much of our ideas about, let's just take men, for instance, as the question, much of our ideas about masculinity and what it means to be a man is rooted squarely in us being able to provide financially. The provisions that we can offer a woman. And that runs parallel with her not being able to do really anything for herself or very little for herself. And so it's contingent upon, this is old school thinking now, the health of the relationship. And I use health in quotes because I don't think that was a healthy dynamic to begin with. But the health of the relationship, or how well we were able to survive or function in our relationship, was contingent upon me being able to provide and her not being able to provide for herself. And so the more I provide for her, the more of a man I feel like I am. But now if you level that playing field and you take that away from a lot of men, they struggle to see their purpose in the life of that woman because, well, this is what I'm rooted in. I'm supposed to be a provider. And if she's able to provide for herself, if she's already got her own house, she's already driving a Mercedes Benz, everything in the refrigerator is stocked to the nine, to the hilt, her closet, she's dressed to the nines. What do you need me for? And so a lot of men struggle with that. And so one of the things that we have to relearn is a much more organic way of boy meets girl. Remember how in school you used to, you meet a boy and you like him, or for the guys, you see a girl and you like her and you get those butterflies and you're nervous about talking to him and you're writing those little notes. That's organic. But then this system of things comes into play and we learn that I have to provide or I'm not a man. And you do have to provide to an extent, for sure. I'm not taking that away. But your manhood is not rooted squarely in your ability to provide and her ability or inability to provide for herself. So we got to get back to a much more organic way of relating. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that answers the question because you brought up a good point, and I think it's because the way it is supposed to be. And I don't want to jump into the next question I have for you yet, but it really is it's having to look at things differently because we are no longer in that society. It's no longer the same the way it used to be. And
Right.
I think the challenge is really having the concept, allowing yourself to change with time. That's what I think with that thing. Now, I help female entrepreneurs tell their story, unpack their story, and create a powerful presentation. And storytelling has been here from time immemorial, right? When it comes to relationship, how can poor communication, poor storytelling impact the relationship?
So now that sounds like two different things. You're talking about poor storytelling and how it impacts the relationship with the consumer, with the customer.
Well, customer in this case, we're talking about relationship, the customer being your significant other, friends, or anybody you're relating with, not necessarily just the customer client.
So I think that's layered because not everybody's a good storyteller. So if we're talking strictly to business professionals, that's one thing. The primary way we learn is through stories. That's age old. Age is old, right? And so you can put some very profound concepts and ideas in a story, and people are much more likely to grasp the concept because it's woven into a funny story or a heartfelt story. And so your ability to tell a story enhances your message sending ability. And not only your message sending ability, but the ability and even the willingness and excitement that others receive your story or your information. So the better you are as a storyteller, it really does enhance everything that you do, from raising your children. I mean, this is why children love a bedtime story, right? And you can give them concepts, principles, ideas about morality and strength and perseverance. And you can communicate all manners of ideas through storytelling that if you take those same principles and you just go line by line, you take the story out, pretty soon people are yawning. And this is why I made a great storyteller to my kids at bedtime, because I didn't have great storytelling ability, but I was very principled and I would put them to sleep just like that. Right. But if you want to keep somebody engaged and you want to keep them alive and feeling connected to what ideas that you're trying to share, then storytelling is the best way to do that.
Now we talk about the storytelling, but part of storytelling in a big umbrella is really, and that's where I'm getting at, is communication. How does poor communication impact your relationship? Because when I say storytelling, when you're trying to convince whether it's at work, you're trying to convince your supervisor, you're trying to convince a client, you're trying to convince your spouse, that's storytelling. That's a story that you have to tell,
Yeah.
whether we look at it as a communication or whether we look at it as a storytelling. That's what I mean.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you don't always, so when you talk about being at work with your boss, you don't always have time for a story, right? But we are emotional beings. People like to say that men are logical and women are emotional. Nonsense. We're all emotional beings. And so when you can pull at heartstrings, right? If you can tug at someone's heartstrings, you can get them to do almost anything. And it's really a science of manipulation if you think about it. And so then if you take the inverse of that and you take someone who's not a good storyteller or a poor storyteller, then it's going to lessen their impact. It's going to lessen their or weaken their ability to motivate people to do or manipulate people to do what you want them to do. And so if you want somebody, here's one of the reasons that they put the deadlines on sales. They tell you a story that, hey, if you don't buy it by midnight, the sale ends. And that excites people, right? It gets people moving. Not everybody, right? But the goal is to get people to feel some sort of urgency or some sort of connectedness to the idea that you're trying to convey. And so if you're not good at that, it's going to weaken your ability to impact those that you're trying to communicate with. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that answers the question. And I'm really thinking about when I think about the communication, I'm thinking about now we talked about how men feel when the money is coming in, yet they don't feel they are needed anymore. Yeah, when I think about communication, how poor communication impacts the relationship, I think about where people are not being where people are being misunderstood. And if it's not communicated, you'll be thinking one thing. And while I'm thinking, I just want to make money, and maybe I don't want you to work hard anymore, right? But in your mind, you had a different thing because perhaps I have not communicated my intent for working so hard because I don't want you to get two jobs. Or maybe I think you sacrificed so much while I was going to school, you were working two jobs, and so on and so forth. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay. Yeah. I get what you're saying. I think I don't know that I would answer it very differently, just from the standpoint that really communicate. So communication isn't just about sending a message.
Mhm.
Communication is also about making sure that the message is received the way that you intended it to be received. And so analogies might help that, but ultimately understanding is what we're looking for. And so your desire in that instance is to make sure that the person understands as much as anything else. Because there are times where we can communicate an idea. So for instance, I like what you're wearing. I love the blouse that you have on, and I like the way your hair looks, right? You look very lovely today. But if I communicate that, depending on my posture, my facial expression, I could say, nice dress. And you might say, well, what did he mean by that? Right? I don't like the way you said that. Or if I say, Christy, I love your hair. Oh my God, is my hair okay? Because the tone that I used, the way that I said it, but now if you rewind 30 seconds and I said, like, I really like that blouse you're wearing, and I love your hair. You know, the way that you say things, the energy with which you express those ideas makes a great difference as well. So
Wow.
again, I don't know that I would answer the question any different from
Different because they are both related.
Yeah.
They are both related. So you answered that question very well. Now let's talk about. Now I'm gonna dive back into what we talked about, and that is men and women. It used to be men make more money and women make less. Now you know it, and I know it, that in a lot of households, women are making more money than men. I wouldn't say a lot of households, but in some households, women are making more money than men. And even those that are not married as well, say they are dating or they have significant other, is still the same thing. Where some women are making more money than men. Now what?
Yeah. So belief, right? There's magic in believing. There's so much power in belief. And an identity belief is the greatest predictor of human behavior. Okay. And so if I've internalized this idea that I'm less of a man because she makes more money, that right there is going to be very hard to undo. So we like to call that stinking thinking, right? That's a very unhealthy way of thinking, But again, this is something that has been woven into men and boys since childhood.
Yes.
And so this has to be overcome. And until we overcome that, that's always going to be the simmering pot beneath the relationship. And it could boil over at any time because the foundational belief about what I'm offering to this relationship has been disturbed. Right?
Mm.
And so this goes back to the mastery of self and mastering your emotions and having a healthy relationship with yourself. It is impossible to be in a healthy relationship with anybody if you don't first have a healthy relationship with yourself. And so men, just as much as women, we have some very unhealthy ideas about what it means to relate. And there are a lot of women who will bring these ideas to relationships. Well, I make the most money, so now I'm wearing the pants in the family. Now I get to say da 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 da, et cetera, et cetera. And that will undermine the relationship. Again, organic boy meets girl, right? And
Mm.
then in that, there has to be a healthy level of appreciation just for the person that you're in relationship with. If you don't have that, you're undermining the relationship uh, all by yourself before you even get started. And so if you feel like your worth is tied to your bank account, that's going to be a problem, right? So, and again, I know that challenges a lot of people's thinking. There was a time where my wife, she came into a large sum of money, right? I was only making, I think maybe this was in the beginning of our relationship. I was making maybe $20,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
and she came into stock market went well for her, and she came into, I think it was like 40 grand or something like that. This is what I make in a whole year, more than double what I make in a whole year. And she came to me and she said, wow, look what we have. What do you think we should do? And
Mm.
this ties into the idea that all money is our money. It doesn't matter who makes the most. Everything that comes into this relationship is a byproduct of our relationship. So everything is ours. Now, again, that doesn't mean that we don't have our personal funds for our personal expenses. Maybe she wants to get her hair done. Maybe she wants to get her nails done or buy a new outfit. We
Mm-hmm.
have our own personal money for that, but it's an overflow from the total pot, right? So everything is ours, regardless of who makes more. And then from there, we decide, okay, well, and look, everybody's idea about what a lot of money or what a little money is relevant to that relationship. So in some relationships, $50 is a lot of money. And so we might need to check in with each other before spending anything over $50. In another relationship, $500 is a lot of money. So anything under $500, we don't even discuss it. But if it's an expense over $500, maybe we need to come to the table and talk about it. And so this is just a way of keeping the lines of communication open and healthy, making sure that we have strong feelings about the right things, making sure we're on the same page, have the same ideas and same goals about the outcome. It's important community, and this goes back to what you were talking about with communication. So yeah.
Thank you. You're really dropping a lot of nuggets. If you're watching, be sure to drop some comments. And we'll come back to you and answer any questions or your comments. So thank you for watching us. Thank you for watching us. Don't forget this show is every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So let's continue this conversation now. I'm gonna follow up with the question I asked, and that is that we like the traditional way of relationship, but yet we are engaging in this modern way of relationship. Can we win, and how can we get the best of both worlds? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because Hollywood paints this picture. They show us these movies where people they get these extremely strong love connections. The passion is very high. I mean, it's just off the rails, right?
So proper.
Say again.
I said soap opera.
Yeah. These soap opera ideas, right? And there's a lot of lust involved in that. And then there's also an underlying current of wrongdoing, right? And so that kind of heightens it a bit. But traditionally, the idea of getting married for love and romance is a very new phenomenon. It's only a few hundred years old. Prior to that, the arrangements, the marriages were arranged. We had arranged marriages. And so we didn't marry for love or because we had strong feelings. We married for, this goes back to the business of love, right? There was a transactional or contract or this idea that this makes sense. And that's why we're getting married. And then some couples were lucky enough, if they had the right ideas about going beyond just the business, then they could experience that Hollywood love affair type of thing, right? The Hollywood love and strong emotions type of connection. But some couples were just rooted in the day-to-day mundanity of, I go to work, I pay the bills, you do your part. And yeah, we have sex, we make babies, but there's no real strong love connection. So now, how do we get the old school idea of stick-to-itness because of the business part and merge that with the modern aspect of what we see on TV? Is that possible? And I say absolutely. And I think my marriage is a good example of that in my mind. Like, we have the business side of it. We work well together. But my wife and I are closer now in our 33rd year than we were in our first year. So how do you do that? One of the ways that you do that, you've already mentioned that you have to. So I'm going to tell you that I'll say it this way. The three most important aspects of any marriage, you have to have strong communication, great communication. And again, that's message sent, message received, but received in the way that I intended it to be received, right? So strong communication is foundational. I think equally important is the commitment. There has to be a strong commitment to the relationship. Now, some people might say, well, loyalty is the same thing as commitment, but it's not. See, I can decide that I'm not going to cheat on my wife without being committed to making sure that she lives her best life. I can sit right here in the living room, never entertain another woman, but don't do anything about whatever pain she might be experiencing. That takes a deeper level of resolve. And I call that resolve commitment. So commitment is just as important. And what do I mean? I say that I'm committed to making sure that she has the best possible outcome about this experience with me. And she's equally committed to making sure that I have the best possible outcome about this experience with her. And then last but not least, I throw in respect. Respect is crucial. It's a critical component, right? And so with these ideas, and we know what respect is, right? I mean, we can express love and no matter how heartfelt it is, if you don't respect each other, how do you speak about your wife or how do you speak about your husband when they're not around? Yeah, we know you say the right things when they're standing right there, but what do you say when they're not around? Right? Girl, I can't stand the way he, leaves his clothes all over the floor. He just makes me sick. He's so lazy. Right? The words are energy. And so even though you might not say those things to him, that's a vibration that's carried in those words, and that can be felt even without saying it. What do they say? 90% of all communication is nonverbal, right? He can feel that in your posture, in your body language, and vice versa. I know we're talking to mostly women, so I'm tailoring my conversation for that reason. But everything that I say to men, really, for the most part, it applies to women as well. So there are some ideas. I think those three are foundational, but also included in that would be thoughtfulness and compassion, a spirit of compromise. Intimacy there has to be a high level of intimacy and trust. All of these things are critically important. So you can add to that whatever you want, but I think if you remove any of those, you'll find that your relationship is struggling. And so in my book, I wrote the conditions of love, right? 31 days to mastering your relationship. Shameless plug, right? But here's what I say about love and this Hollywood idea. All of these things that I just named are ingredients that we pour into our relationship. and the outcome is love. So people get married for strong feelings and love and all that. I don't think that those are good reasons to get married, not alone. I think love is much more about what you do than what you say or what you necessarily feel. So again, I think the Hollywood aspect comes as a result of pouring into your relationship the different things that I just discussed. Does that answer the question?
That answers the question. Love is what you do, not what you feel. Is that what you said?
It's a combination of what you feel, but also what you're willing to do and the sacrifices that you're willing to make, the compromises that you're willing to make. I can sit here and say I love my wife so strongly and I feel so strongly about my wife, but what am I willing to do to make sure that she has the best possible experience in this life while interacting with me? That's what love is, not just what you feel.
You know, as you are talking, I grew up in a developing country. And when coming up, I noticed that, and it, to a certain extent, it's still that way today. But, you know, we gravitated towards this modern way of living, a modern way of having a relationship where you're supposed to, or people tend to date sometimes a year, 2 years, 3 years, doesn't really matter before they get into a relationship. But when I was growing up, there wasn't more of that. I born and raised in Nigeria, and you know, using my parents as an example and relationships during that time, there weren't any dating. It was like you see this person, you first of all inquire from the family, from your family, the man inquiring, oh, I like this woman. Let's go inquire from, not even about the girl. First of all, it's about the family that the girl came from, the parents, the mom, how the mom lived with the father, how the father treated the mom, how the family, are they reputable family, are they coming from, is the girl coming from a reputable family, is there any distasteful action that the families are known for. And I guess that goes back to what you said, arranged marriage. Sometimes they don't even know the girl at all, haven't even seen the girl. Somebody will say, oh, you get into getting married, this family is a good family, all the children have to be good because the parents are well known, they train the children well. Oh, I have a girl that the 18, 20 years, however old, right? And next thing you know, they come to your family. Next thing you know, they come to your family, and you, the person you don't even know,
Right.
you don't even know, and your parents said such and such a person came, and sometimes let me tell you, the man is not even there. It's the parents that will go for the girl, right? And then they will tell the man, we got this girl for you. But they've already vetted the girl. They know the type of girl, they know the kind of family, they know everything. Because guess what? That's when it takes a village to raise a child. Not anymore, to a certain extent. Because guess what? Not only your family, every other person in the community have been seeing that girl. They know who that girl is. So your family are going to talk to other people. Oh, we're going to marry this girl. What do you think? They will even go and ask about the girl beside asking in a family,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we talk about the business of love, and I think to that, to a certain extent, it really becomes a business because there was no love whatsoever involved at that time. There was a time where you have to make sure that the man is strong enough, he's not a lazy man, he can farm to feed the family. The woman is looked at, does she have a good behavior? Is she somebody that can raise the children? Is she somebody that can maintain the children and bring up the children and do all those what a wife's supposed to do? In other words, there was a role between the man and the woman. And even though now we looked at them and said, well, they didn't have a good life because they didn't voice out a lot, right? And that may be, true to a certain extent. But somehow what I notice is that at their later age, whatever that transpired prior to this age, their later in life, doesn't matter anymore. And you see them so happy. And one thing I learned is that relationships, there were less divorce. I'm saying this because you keep talking about the business of love. There were less divorce. But the question we ask then is, just because there were less divorce, were they really happy?
That's right. That's
Were
right.
they really happy? Or did they stay there because they had to stay there? Again, there were roles. The man makes the money, the woman stays at home.
Yeah. So
So,
yeah, one of my favorite shows is called Married at First Sight, and
oh, I have
it's
to watch that show. Everybody been telling me about the show.
there's a few different relationship shows I watch, and I get into stuff like that because this is what I do, right? This is my profession. And so Married at First Sight is one, and man, I forget this other one that I watch. I forget the name of it. But anyway, there's this Vietnamese couple on there, and they were talking about how unacceptable it was to get a divorce. But in that same vein, the young man was talking about how miserable his mother was. Throughout the whole marriage, she was miserable, and so finally, his parents ended up getting a divorce. But the point is this: part of the reason that our divorce rate is so high here is that it's culturally acceptable. It's almost in vogue to a degree, because now you have people throwing divorce parties. There's no shame in getting a divorce anymore. It's just what we do when the relationship fails, right? As if the relationship fails organically, and it doesn't. It didn't. It didn't just fail. You don't just fall out of love. You walk out of love, right?
What's the difference?
Well, falling out of love is when you just allow things to go along as they are. Like you don't put any effort into making sure that you keep the fire lit, right? You don't put any new logs on the fire. You're just hoping that same fire never burns out. And it's almost like standing in front of your fireplace saying, well, if you give me heat, I'll give you wood.
Wait a minute. Wait. Don't go too far, because this is one of the problems in relationship. And I don't care whether it's a relationship between spouse, relationship with just any type of relationship. And you talk about still doing something in a layman's term, I'm going to say, you're still doing something to keep the relationship going.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the thing. Oftentimes people get in this relationship, initially there's that fire that brings the two together. But it seems like once the relationship has emerged, all of a sudden that fire is no longer there. And that fire is no longer, and I think that's what you were talking about. So please continue.
Yeah, the fire is always the fire is the only way the fire goes out is if you don't put any more logs on the fire. And part of that is a major part of that is the communication aspect. What are you addressing? What her needs are. Talking to women, right? Because your audience is women.
Yes.
Needs? What are his needs? What are his desires? What does he like? What doesn't he like? Does he have a problem coming home from work and seeing you in a bonnet with your house shoes and your house coat and never putting on something fancy? Like I came in yesterday. I'm going to transparent moment here. I'm going to share with you a little bit, maybe TMI, right? But I'm going to share anyway. I came home from work yesterday, and on my ride home, I'm like, man, I want to see my wife. I went in and worked overtime, and I just, I was feeling a fire, right? And I couldn't wait to get home to see my wife. And I stopped and bought some of these. This is pomegranate season, the little big red plump fruit with all of the juicy red seeds inside. I stopped and got some of those things because I know she likes those things. And I can't wait to see my wife because I want to spend some time with her, right? And we call it sexy time, right?
Yes.
So I walk in the door and I got this energy, and she comes down the stairs and around the corner and she greets me with this smile. And she's got this red teddy on.
Ah.
She must have been thinking the same thing that I was thinking.
Oh.
So here we are in our 33rd year of marriage, and she still spices it up for me, right? She still makes sure that she offers me that treat that I like to see, right? And that's not an everyday thing, but it is a sometimes thing, right? And then not only that, but I bring things to her that I know she likes. She doesn't want to see me getting all flabby and out of shape where my breasts are bigger than hers, right? So I got to do some push-ups. I got to do some jumping jacks, right? We have to do things that enhance the experience that each other is experiencing when we're interacting with each other, right? So part of that is what goes into keeping the fire lit. Speaking sweetly to each other. I speak kindly to my wife. I say please and thank you. 33 years, and I know that she'll do anything that I ask her to do, but it's always a request. Please, will you do this for me? Thank you for doing that for me. Right? And she's the same way. Hey, baby, will you do X, Y, Z? I'm like, yeah, no problem. And when I do it, I really appreciate that. This is her response to me fulfilling the request that she had. And so these are undercurrents or logs in the fire, if you will, that keeps me feeling good about seeing her and keeps her feeling good about seeing me. So let me finish with this point. Just because you have longevity in a marriage doesn't mean that you have a good marriage. There are a lot of people that have all this time together, but that's all they have is time. I want to sweeten that time, right? And this is why I'm into the business that I'm in. This is why I practice and help couples the way that I do, because marriage can be just as good in the 33rd year as it was in the first, second, and third year. As a matter of fact, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to get better with time, like fine wine.
As you are talking, you tend to talk more of married couple, but how about the people that are not married? And you also serve those individuals, but there's something that you do for people, whether they are married or not, especially before they get into that relationship.
Yep.
How you get to determine, will it work? Are you willing to put in the time to get this relationship to this point? Or this is what I see on this relationship. If you're willing to work on it to get this, to get it to ABC, then do it. You must do this.
Yep.
But if you're not willing to do this, you can't get the ABC. Can you expound on that?
Yeah. So look, I say this all the time. It is absolutely impossible to be in a healthy relationship unless you're first in a healthy relationship with yourself. One of the things that a lot of women don't understand about men and what we want, we love to see women in their most natural form. Now, that doesn't mean don't wear any makeup, don't do any accentuations. But right now, women are into a lot of women, not all. A lot of women are into the big eyelashes. Right? We don't like that.
I never put one on. I never put one on. Oh, hey.
Most men don't like all of these extra heavy accentuations. We don't typically like a whole lot of extra heavy makeup and all of the extra, like we love natural hair, most of us. Now, there are women who feel more comfortable wearing, a little bit of accentuations, whatever they are. So you get it how you live, right? But I think the majority of men like women in the closest to their natural form as we can get you. Now, again, that doesn't mean don't accentuate or enhance your beauty in certain ways, but don't overdo it. The big eyelashes, we don't like that. The excessive amounts of hair weave, we don't like that.
Really?
We don't. Yeah, most of us just don't. And we're not
Wow.
attracted to it. And so what I find is that oftentimes women are doing many of these things because they're looking for the approval of other women. Yeah, they say, I'm doing this for myself and to make myself feel better. I
Uh-huh.
get it. I get that aspect of it too.
Okay.
But there's also another aspect where a lot of women are doing this because, oh, girl, that's sharp on you. But what about what we think? We're the ones you're trying to attract, not her. So you got to fish with the right bait, right? And so, what do men want from you? What do men like in a woman? And I think that in this society, rarely, if ever, is the question asked. Okay, yeah, we know what you want in a man: 6 feet tall, six-pack abs, six figures. We know what you want from us, but rarely is the question asked, what does he want from me? And so
Mm,
you got to begin asking yourself, what do men want from you? And equally important, if you want that kind of man, what is it about you that would make him choose you?
that's an important question.
Right?
That really is an important
And
question.
are you willing to do those things? Not just do them just for the sake of getting him, but are you willing to continue to do those things to maintain what it is that he felt for you? So I go into the conditioning of the mind because we have to start approaching relationships with a healthy mindset. We don't marry for love or feelings, right? This is a strategic thing, but the feelings aren't to be ignored, right? We don't just say that the relationships are void of emotion, because emotions are the fuel for what we need to continue to sustain that mission that we're calling the business of love. Emotions are fuel. They make great servants, but horrible masters, right? So we have to make sure that we're feeling strong about the right things. First and foremost, the relationship with ourselves and presenting ourselves as the best version of ourselves that we can possibly muster up when we present ourselves to our counterpart. Does that make sense?
Now that makes sense, especially, I have to say you are absolutely right in terms of when you get into before even you get into a relationship, asking that question, that crucial question. I want a man who's 6 feet tall, six pack, right? I
Right.
want a man who goes to the gym, has a buff chest, right? But
Right.
then the question is, you never really done on you to ask, what does that man want?
Yep.
And oftentimes it's almost like a play where you play to get the hunt. But once you get it, it's the rest is over. Well, listen, everybody, I want to thank you all for joining us. If you're watching us right now, don't forget that we do this show every Monday 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we want you to be a part of it. Drop your comments and we will get back to you. And as we are coming to the close, don't forget that I help female entrepreneurs who wants to take their presentation to a different whole level and help you unpack your story and create a high converting presentation that gets you clients, get you seen, and get you out and be seen in the marketplace to gain more clients. So as we come to the close, take the floor, share some important things that individuals, married or not, need to know, females specifically, about relationship, whether they are going in or in it already, and they are trying to have that harmony to have a last longing relationship.
Yeah. So I think as much as anything, people need to understand that marriage is a collaborative effort. Even if we just break it down to what a regular boy meets girl relationship, if you're expecting a healthy outcome, it's about a collaborative effort. Okay. Now, watch this. We've been given all these ideas that,
Mm,
well, men expect this and men are that way and women are this way and women expect that. And we got to do this. Listen, we are much more similar than we are different. We're not nearly as different from each other as men and women. We are not nearly as different as we've been thought and programmed to believe. Okay. So just understanding So one of the things that I tell men, and a lot of men get upset with me when I say this, because there are a lot of men who this word submission is being thrown around. I need a woman to be submissive, and I want my woman to be. What I say is this: that word right now is a trigger word for a lot of people, especially when a woman is making as much or more money than you, and now you want her to come underneath you and be submissive. And I understand that, right? And much of the Bible even talks about that. What I say is change the language.
Yes.
And speak to your woman in terms of, what does it look like to be in a cooperative relationship? I don't expect my woman to be submissive, but I do expect her to be highly cooperative, right? Now, just changing that language from submission to cooperation.
What does that mean? Before you go too far, what's the difference between the two?
Okay, so when I grew up, I watched wrestling, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things on wrestling that we used to like to see the guys do is tap out. Okay, I've had enough. I can't take anymore. Tap out. That's called submission. I submit. I can't take anymore. I submit. Submission really means to come under or to give in.
Okay.
Even when I don't want to.
Even when I don't want to. That is it. Even when I don't want to.
Even when it hurts, I give in. Even when it feels like it's against my best interest, I give in. This is what a lot of people think of when they say submission. And then when we think about the Asian couple that I mentioned, the Vietnamese couple that I mentioned, how long she stayed in that marriage, even though she felt like she was living in hell. That's submission to a lot of women. In a lot of women's minds, it means to do the unthinkable even when it's unbearable, right? Nobody wants to live like that. And what we're experiencing now in America is that for the first time, women are actually able to be self-sufficient, sustain themselves without the help of men. And what we're seeing that play out because women are walking away from relationships where men don't meet their needs and don't meet their desires. If you don't make me feel good, I'm out of here. This is what a lot of women are saying, right? And so what I tell men, what I teach men and coach them to think in terms of, and even speak in terms of, what does it look like to be in a cooperative effort with you? What does it look like for me to get a high level of cooperation from you? And in doing that, you will find that many women will offer you just as much, if not more, than you were looking for when you were demanding submission.
Absolutely.
My wife will do anything for me. I don't talk in terms of submission. I talk in terms of cooperation. And that little trigger word, that little buzzword, cooperation, it resonates with her so deeply, rather than submission, which tends to be a turnoff word. And I still get what I want. I still win. But guess what? She wins too. And that's what it's about. We both have to win. We both have to feel like we're winning in this relationship. Feelings are important. People don't understand. People like to be dismissive. Your feelings, your emotions are fuel for the journey that we're calling a relationship.
Wow, you put it so well. I cannot top that. I'm not even going to talk anymore. We're just going to close on that note. And I just want to say thank you for your.
Let me tell them how they can get in touch with me. They got to know how to get in touch.
Yes, I'm coming to that. So, so I just want to thank you so much. And at this time, please tell our audience how to contact you, to work with you, to refer people to you. Take the seat.
Yes. So everybody's talking about they want unconditional love. I don't preach that. I don't teach that. I talk about the conditions of love. Much of what I talked about and shared during this discussion today, the conditions of love. My website is www.theconditionsoflove.com. Right? You can, at that website, you can get all kinds of lessons and training, and you can interact with me as your coach, hire me as your coach if you feel like I can help you in that way. My book is called The Conditions of Love, 31 Days to Mastering Your Relationship, right? People say that marriage is such hard work. I say, no, marriage is not hard work, it's heart work. So that's why my book is The Heart Work Book, 31 Days to Mastering Your Relationship. You can email me at info@theconditionsoflove.com. Info@theconditionsoflove.com. And look, I say this, I'll close on this. Anybody and everybody can have a healthy, sustaining, loving, lasting relationship. Anybody can. Most people won't, but anybody can. At the end of the day, it's about doing what you can. All you can do is all you can do. And that's enough. But you got to make sure that you do all you can do. That's all I got. And I'll say to you, Chrissy, you're doing an excellent job in what you're doing as well. I really appreciate what you're putting forth. You're doing a remarkable job. So I want to thank you for that too.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Audience, don't forget the book, The Almanac of Rising Stars. Don't forget to get a copy. And thanks for everyone that have supported and gotten copies of The Almanac of Rising Stars. And also, there's also a link. You can click there if you want help unpacking your stories and creating high converting presentation that helps you stand out from the noise and get more clients. Until next time, everybody. My name, of course, is Dr. Christy Wujuku, and I am the host of this amazing, amazing TV TV show, Narrate Your Story TV. I can't get it out. I'll see everybody same time, same place, Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Bye. Bye, Vaun.
Thank you for having me, Christy.